It began not with a coronation, nor a public decree, but with a sealed legal confirmation slipped quietly into royal hands. Prince Edward's lawyers had verified what few inside the palace ever imagined. Sandringham, one of the monarchy's most sacred estates, was to pass to Prince Edward, not remain. Under King Charles's control, and certainly not within Queen Camilla's reach, for years, whispers suggested Charles had kept this succession arrangement hidden. But now the silence has fractured, and the shockwaves are tearing through the House of Windsor. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The document itself, according to reports circulating among senior palace legal circles, was not dramatic in appearance. It arrived without ceremony, without warning, and without the kind of public spectacle that usually accompanies royal succession matters. Yet its contents carried the weight of a constitutional earthquake. Edward's legal team had reportedly spent months verifying inheritance clauses tied to Sandringham, cross-checking archival estate instruments, sealed trust language, and long-buried succession directives that traced back to arrangements quietly protected under Queen Elizabeth II's private estate. Framework. What emerged was devastating in its simplicity. Sandringham had already been spoken for, and not in Charles's favour to redistribute. That truth has ignited a crisis far beyond property. Sandringham is not merely a residence, nor just another royal holding on an estate ledger. It is part of the sacred geography of the British monarchy, a place where Christmas traditions, dynastic rituals, and generations of Windsor continuity have been anchored. To inherit Sandringham is to inherit symbolic legitimacy. And that is what makes this revelation so explosive. If Edward has indeed been designated as its rightful future steward, then this was never a casual administrative oversight. This was a deliberate arrangement one Charles is believed to have known about for years. That detail now lies at the heart of the storm. Palace insiders whisper that Charles had long been aware of the inheritance structure, but chose not to disclose it beyond a narrow inner circle. Whether that silence was meant to preserve family stability, avoid confrontation, or shield Camilla from political fallout remains unclear. What is clear is the damage now unfolding. Camilla, by several accounts, was never informed that Sandringham had already slipped beyond her sphere of influence. For someone whose position inside the monarchy has often depended on careful control of access, proximity, and domestic royal influence, the revelation lands as both personal betrayal and political humiliation. Inside palace walls, aides have reportedly moved with unusual urgency to contain the leak. Administrative streams, ranging from treasury whispers to private household staff chatter, suggest emergency internal consultations began almost immediately after Edward's legal confirmation surfaced. Senior courtiers are said to be reviewing estate communication records, not simply to understand the inheritance chain, but to determine how such a monumental truth remained buried while assumptions inside Camilla's camp continued unchecked. That panic reveals a deeper fear. If Sandringham was hidden in silence, what other royal arrangements remain concealed beneath the surface? And at the centre of it all stands Prince Edward, the quiet sentinel of the family, whose public modesty has long masked a deeper institutional role. For decades he has been underestimated precisely because he does not wage battles in public. But this moment changes that perception. By allowing his lawyers to confirm the documents without spectacle, Edward has forced the monarchy into a reckoning it can no longer postpone. The legal papers may be silent, but their meaning is thunderous. But the real scandal was not that Edward would inherit Sandringham, it was why Charles kept Camilla in the dark for so long. Long before this legal confirmation emerged, there were murmurs that King Charles had entered into a private understanding rooted in Queen Elizabeth II's final estate architecture, one that quietly positioned Edward as guardian of Sandringham's future. Hidden behind ceremonial appearances and public unity, Charles was allegedly protecting a promise made years earlier, even as Camilla believed the estate remained part of her long-term royal sphere. What now appears to be a sudden royal rupture may, in truth, have been set in motion years before the public ever sensed a fracture. According to whispers from those familiar with the late Queen's estate arrangements, Elizabeth II had become increasingly deliberate in her final years about how the monarchy's most sacred properties would be shielded from instability. Sandringham, unlike ordinary royal assets, carried emotional and dynastic significance that stretched beyond one reign. It was never simply about ownership, it was about guardianship. And in that private calculus, Edward seems to have occupied a place few had fully understood. There are growing suggestions that Charles was not acting on impulse when he remained silent about Sandringham's future. Rather, he may have been bound by what palace insiders describe as a deeply personal covenant, an understanding forged not through public decree, but through maternal trust. Queen Elizabeth II, whose influence over royal continuity extended far beyond her death, was known for constructing succession mechanisms that protected the institution from emotional politics. If she believed Edward represented steadier stewardship for Sandringham, Charles may have seen himself less as decision-maker and more as reluctant custodian of her final will. That possibility transforms his silence from secrecy into burden, but it does not erase the consequences. Because while Charles carried that hidden obligation in silence, Camilla appears to have been living under entirely different assumptions. Reports suggest she had every reason to believe Sandringham would remain within her long-term orbit as Queen Consort, especially as Charles consolidated his reign and the monarchy adjusted to its post-Elizabeth era. Her confidence was not without logic. For generations, royal spouses have exercised influence over household estates through proximity to the sovereign. Yet this case was different. The old pattern monarch inherits, spouse shares influence, heirs wait their turn had been quietly broken by a clause that changed everything. That is what makes this arrangement so historically disruptive. Sandringham has traditionally followed a predictable rhythm through the direct line of sovereign continuity, passing in ways that reinforce visible royal hierarchy. But Edward's claim disrupts that expectation. If the inheritance was indeed secured through Elizabeth's final directives, then the estate was intentionally removed from the ordinary gravitational pull of Charles's household. In effect, bloodline trust was placed above marital influence. That choice carries enormous symbolic force. It suggests that, in the eyes of the late Queen, preserving Sandringham's sanctity required insulation from shifting alliances inside the present court. For Charles, this may have created an impossible balancing act. To reveal the truth early would have triggered conflict with Camilla and risked destabilizing palace unity during a fragile transition period. To conceal it, however, meant allowing false assumptions to harden into expectations. That is the silent tragedy now unfolding around him. Every delayed disclosure has deepened the sting of betrayal. Every year he withheld the truth gave Camilla more reason to believe her future place at Sandringham was secure. And now that illusion has shattered in the harshest possible way through legal confirmation that leaves no room for negotiation. What makes the matter even more painful is that Sandringham has become more than an estate in this struggle. It now stands as a battleground between two competing visions of monarchy itself, one rooted in inherited bloodline duty, the other shaped by marital partnership and evolving royal influence. Edward's rise as Sandringham's confirmed heir is not just a legal victory. It is a declaration, written years ago in silence, about who was truly trusted to protect the crown's sacred inheritance. And while Charles guarded that secret in silence, Camilla was already making plans that would soon collapse under the weight of Edward's claim. For months, insiders whisper that Queen Camilla behaved as though Sandringham would eventually remain under her household influence, reviewing hosting schedules, discussing future staff allocations, even quietly shaping long-term domestic plans. But none of those calculations accounted for the devastating truth now confirmed by Edward's legal camp. She was planning around an estate she would never control. That miscalculation has now become one of the most humiliating reversals of Camilla's royal life. Behind closed palace doors, Sandringham had reportedly become central to her private expectations for the years ahead. It was not merely seen as a seasonal royal retreat, but as a cornerstone of her envisioned long-term domestic authority within the monarchy. Those close to royal household operations suggest she had already begun treating the estate as a future extension of her own influence, assuming that proximity to Charles would naturally translate into enduring access and quiet control. In her mind, Sandringham was not in dispute. It was already part of the map she was drawing. That confidence-shaped decisions now rendered painfully meaningless. Private discussions about staff restructuring, revised holiday hosting patterns, and even subtle changes to household planning are said to have taken place under the assumption that Sandringham would remain tied to Charles's reigning household. Names were considered. Roles were informally floated. Senior aides allegedly examined how future domestic operations might be streamlined around Camilla's preferred inner circle. Every one of those conversations, once spoken with certainty, now hangs in the air like echoes from a vanished future. The legal confirmation from Edward's camp has turned those months of quiet preparation into a monument to false belief. Inside the palace, the shock has been profound. Senior household staff, many of whom were never informed of the hidden inheritance structure, are reportedly reeling from the revelation. Some had already adjusted internal assumptions to align with Camilla's anticipated role at Sandringham. Others now find themselves confronting the reality that they were unknowingly operating inside a fiction sustained by royal silence. The sense of disorientation is not only administrative, it is deeply personal. Trust inside royal households depends on certainty, on the belief that succession pathways are understood by those tasked with maintaining continuity. That certainty has now collapsed, and at the center of this unraveling stands Charles, increasingly exposed by the very silence he once controlled. What may once have been interpreted as quiet discretion is now being re-examined as deliberate concealment. Palace whispers have grown sharper, more unforgiving. The question echoing through royal corridors is no longer whether Charles knew, few now doubt that he did, but why he allowed Camilla's assumptions to deepen unchecked. Each undisclosed year, each withheld clarification, has begun to look less like omission and more like a calculated postponement of inevitable pain. That perception is dangerous because it strikes not only at Charles's judgment, but at the fragile trust that holds together the monarchy's private inner circle. For Camilla, the emotional cost may be even greater than the political one. Reports suggest that within her closest circle, frustration has begun to harden into resentment. Allies who once relied on Charles's assurances are now said to be questioning whether they were misled by the king himself. Confidence in his transparency has weakened. Conversations once shaped by loyalty are increasingly colored by suspicion. The sense of betrayal is not limited to the estate, it has spread into the personal fabric of Camilla's marriage, where silence now carries a sharper edge than any spoken accusation. What makes this reversal so brutal is that Camilla's downfall in this matter did not come through open confrontation. There was no warning, no dramatic challenge, no public contest of wills. Instead, her expectations were quietly dismantled by documents that had existed long before her plans were ever made. She was outmaneuvered not by a sudden decision, but by a truth written into royal history, long before she realized she was standing on borrowed ground. Yet Camilla's humiliation was only the surface wound, because Edward's inheritance came backed by documents far older and stronger than anyone expected. Prince Edward, long dismissed as the monarchy's quiet sentinel, did not respond with outrage or spectacle. Instead, he did what he has done for decades: he let the documents speak. Through a precise legal confirmation executed by his lawyers, Edward activated a dormant inheritance mechanism that insiders now describe as irreversible, binding, and immune to palace politics. In a royal family often defined by public drama and emotional confrontation, Edward's approach has landed with chilling force, precisely because it carried neither. There were no retaliatory statements, no visible displays of grievance, no attempt to turn private conflict into public theatre. Instead, Edward moved with the cold precision of someone who understood that the strongest power inside monarchy is rarely loud. It lies in paper trails, sealed directives, and agreements written long before the crisis becomes visible. By allowing his legal representatives to present authenticated inheritance confirmation tied to prior royal estate arrangements, Edward transformed what many assumed was a family dispute into something far more formidable, a matter of binding royal law. Those documents, according to sources familiar with estate protocol, are believed to be rooted in protected succession clauses established under older royal trust frameworks mechanisms specifically designed to preserve certain crown-linked private holdings from political reinterpretation. If reports are accurate, Sandringham was placed under a protected inheritance structure years ago, shielded by legal language so carefully drafted that even a reigning monarch cannot casually dismantle it. This is what makes Edward's move so devastating to his opponents. He did not create a new claim. He simply activated one that had already been secured, buried in the architecture of royal estate law and waiting for the precise moment when it would become enforceable. That distinction changes everything. Had Edward framed his action as protest, it might have invited negotiation. Had he approached it as grievance, it might have become another internal Windsor conflict to be softened behind closed doors. But this was neither emotional nor personal. It was procedural. It was exact. Palace insiders are increasingly describing it as a legal strike rather than a confrontation, a move calculated not to attack Charles or Camilla directly, but to remove all room for resistance by placing the matter beyond debate. In that single act, Edward demonstrated a kind of authority the monarchy often underestimates. The authority of the royal who understands the fine print better than the politics. For years, Edward has occupied a peculiar place in public perception present, loyal, dutiful, but rarely seen as a decisive force in the balance of royal power. That illusion has now shattered. This inheritance confirmation has revealed him not as a peripheral figure, but as one of the monarchy's most quietly formidable guardians. While others battled for influence through proximity, personality, or public sympathy, Edward appears to have built his strength in silence, mastering the mechanisms that actually govern royal continuity. He has emerged not merely as Sandringham's heir, but as the guardian of monarchy governance at its most intricate and least visible level. The consequences for Charles and Camilla are severe, because the legal terrain now leaves them almost no maneuvering space. Any attempt to challenge Edward's inheritance would risk more than family embarrassment. It could provoke constitutional scrutiny into estate protections, succession trust arrangements, and the private legal frameworks underpinning some of the monarchy's most sacred holdings. That is a threshold Buckingham Palace is deeply reluctant to cross. To interfere now would not simply be politically explosive, it could destabilize legal precedents that protect the Crown's wider estate architecture. In effect, Edward has secured a position so deeply anchored in royal law that opposition has become nearly impossible without inviting institutional fallout. And that is what makes his silence so powerful. Edward has not humiliated Charles with accusation. He has not confronted Camilla with anger. He has done something far more devastating. He has rendered their objections irrelevant. The matter is no longer governed by persuasion, loyalty, or royal emotion. It is governed by documents older than the present conflict and stronger than any present alliance. The palace now finds itself trapped by the same machinery it once believed it controlled. But if Edward's claim was legally untouchable, the question haunting the palace was far more dangerous. What else had Charles concealed? Now the king stands trapped in the very silence he created. On one side is Camilla, blindsided and furious over being excluded from a decision affecting one of the monarchy's most treasured estates. On the other is Edward, armed not with emotion but with legitimacy, documentation, and the quiet force of inherited right. Charles can no longer protect both sides. What once may have seemed like a manageable private omission has now become the defining crisis of Charles's reign. For years he held the secret of Sandringham's future in guarded silence, believing perhaps that delay could preserve fragile peace inside a family already strained by shifting loyalties and competing ambitions. But silence inside the monarchy is never empty. It accumulates weight. it hardens into consequence. And now that consequence has come crashing down on the king himself, forcing him into an impossible position where every path forward carries betrayal. Within Camilla's camp, anger is said to be rising with unmistakable intensity. Those closest to her reportedly see the Sandringham revelation not merely as a legal shock, but as a deeply personal wound inflicted by the man she trusted most. The pain is sharpened by one unbearable truth: Charles knew. While Camilla shaped her expectations around a future she believed secure, Charles allowed those expectations to grow in the shadow of a reality he never shared. That silence has now become the center of her fury. Palace insiders suggest that what began as disbelief has turned into quiet outrage, with members of her inner circle openly questioning how such a monumental truth could have been withheld for so long, without explanation. Yet Charles's ability to repair that damage is almost non-existent, because Edward's position is not built on persuasion, it is built on law. The inheritance confirmation has left the king with little room to maneuver, and that may be the cruelest twist of all. Had Edward's claim rested on interpretation or informal royal preference, Charles might still have found a path to mediation. But the documents are binding, and the legal framework beneath them appears immovable. Any effort to intervene now would risk undermining protected succession mechanisms that extend far beyond Sandringham itself. Charles is not merely politically constrained, he is constitutionally cornered. His crown gives him prestige, but in this matter it gives him no escape. That reality is sending waves of anxiety through the senior courtier ranks. Behind palace walls, fears are mounting that this dispute may deepen into something more dangerous than a family disagreement. The monarchy survives on the projection of internal coherence. It depends on the illusion that even its private conflicts are governed by order, dignity, and disciplined restraint. But Sandringham has exposed a fracture line running through the very center of the royal household. Courtiers now worry that the unresolved tension between king, queen, and brother could widen into a visible split, eroding trust among aides, staff, and even the public, who still look to the crown as a symbol of unity. For Charles personally, the damage is profound. His credibility has been weakened not because he made a controversial decision, but because he concealed one already made. That distinction matters. Kings are expected to carry burdens. They are not expected to leave those closest to them in ignorance, while those burdens reshape the future in secret. The revelation has recast Charles not as protector of royal balance, but as a monarch whose silence destabilized the very family harmony he sought to preserve. Every unanswered question now circles back to him. Why was Camilla not told? Why was the truth delayed? Why did he wait until legal confirmation made concealment impossible? And beyond the personal heartbreak lies a larger danger. The monarchy's image of unity is beginning to crack. Sandringham has become more than an inheritance dispute. It has become a symbol of concealed loyalties, hidden agreements, and the growing divide between public appearances and private truths. The crown's carefully maintained facade of calm continuity is under strain, and every whispered doubt inside palace corridors adds pressure to a structure already trembling under the weight of revelation. And as blame spreads through palace corridors, Sandringham itself becomes the battleground for a far greater struggle over royal legacy. This is no longer merely an inheritance dispute. Sandringham has become the embodiment of an ancient royal principle, that sacred estates belong not to ambition but to bloodline stewardship. Edward's inheritance is now being interpreted by many within palace circles as a restoration of dynastic order, a decisive rejection of influence politics and marital entitlement. What began as a concealed legal revelation has now transformed into something far larger, almost mythic in its significance. Sandringham is no ordinary royal possession. It stands as one of the monarchy's most sacred strongholds, woven into the emotional and hereditary fabric of the House of Windsor. Its meaning stretches beyond title deeds and succession paperwork. To hold Sandringham is to hold a living fragment of royal continuity itself. That is why Edward's inheritance has struck such a profound chord within palace ranks. In the eyes of many insiders, this is not simply a transfer of property. It is the crown correcting its own course, restoring an order that some believed had drifted dangerously close to compromise. For generations, estates like Sandringham have carried a significance rooted in bloodline legitimacy rather than personal preference. They are not treated as assets to be redistributed according to convenience, nor as prizes to be absorbed into the orbit of whoever stands nearest the sovereign. Their function is symbolic as much as practical. They anchor lineage. They protect continuity. And in that context, Edward's succession is being viewed as a powerful reaffirmation that dynastic inheritance still outweighs shifting marital influence, no matter how elevated that influence may appear in public life. The message is stark and unmistakable. Some royal institutions remain beyond negotiation. That reality has cast Camilla's exclusion in a harsh and deeply symbolic light. For years, her ascent into the center of royal authority represented one of the monarchy's most dramatic reinventions, a transformation from contested outsider to queen consort. Yet Sandringham has become the line she could not cross. In private royal interpretation, her exclusion is increasingly seen not as punishment, but as boundary. It is a reminder that influence gained through marriage, however powerful, does not erase the ancient hierarchy of inherited blood. That distinction has always existed beneath the surface of monarchy. Now it has risen into plain view, undeniable and unforgiving. Royal historians are already drawing comparisons to earlier moments in Windsor history, when succession pathways were quietly corrected to preserve dynastic stability. There have been precedent moments when private royal decisions, invisible to the public at the time, later revealed themselves as deliberate acts of institutional preservation. In those cases, the monarchy chose continuity over convenience, lineage over sentiment. Edward's emergence as Sandringham's heir now appears to belong in that same tradition. It is being framed not as disruption, but as restoration, a deliberate return to the older rules that governed royal inheritance before modern personal alliances complicated the equation. And so Sandringham has become more than estate, more than inheritance, more than even a symbol of family dispute. It now stands as the emblem of restored traditional hierarchy inside a monarchy struggling to balance modern relationships against ancient obligations. Every corridor of palace interpretation now bends back toward that truth. Sandringham was never meant to become a negotiable marital asset. It was meant to remain what it has always been, a sacred trust passed through the bloodline, guarded against the shifting winds of personal ambition. Edward's claim has simply made that hidden principle visible again. Yet beneath this apparent restoration lies a tension that refuses to disappear. Because if Sandringham's fate was sealed so long ago, if the bloodline principle was protected with such careful precision, then one haunting possibility remains unresolved. The same hidden logic that governed this estate may exist elsewhere, buried inside sealed directives and undisclosed arrangements, still locked away from public view. The monarchy may have restored order in one place, but in doing so, it has awakened suspicion about what other truths remain buried beneath royal silence. But just as the dust begins to settle, one final question threatens to ignite an even deeper royal reckoning. Behind Edward's confirmed claim lies a deeper mystery, sealed papers still unseen by the public, and perhaps by many senior royals themselves. Reports suggest there may be supplementary directives attached to the Sandringham inheritance arrangement, documents that could reveal whether Queen Elizabeth II herself designed this outcome from beyond the grave. What has shaken the palace most is not merely the inheritance already revealed, but the growing suspicion that Sandringham's transfer may be governed by far more than the documents Edward's lawyers have publicly confirmed. In the days since his legal strike stunned the royal household, whispers have intensified around a second layer of paperwork, sealed supplementary estate directives believed to exist in restricted royal archives, accessible only to a narrow circle of estate trustees and constitutional legal custodians. These rumoured papers, if real, may contain the missing explanation for why Edward's claim was so immediate, so precise, and so impossible to challenge. The possibility that Queen Elizabeth II herself authored or approved these hidden directives has transformed this inheritance dispute into something far more haunting. Even in death, the late Queen remains the invisible architect of royal continuity, and those who knew her methods understand how meticulously she protected the monarchy's future from instability. She was never careless with legacy. If she foresaw potential tensions around Sandringham, it would be entirely in keeping with her long-established instincts to create layered protections, private clauses designed to prevent future monarchs, spouses, or factions from altering what she considered sacred royal geography. That possibility now hangs over Buckingham Palace like an unanswered command from beyond the grave. Among palace insiders, the fear is not simply about what those papers might say, it is about what they might unleash. If supplementary directives exist and become public, they could expose years of hidden estate planning, concealed even from senior members of the royal family. Such a revelation would deepen already painful fractures inside the House of Windsor. Camilla's camp, already wounded by the Sandringham decision, could interpret any hidden clauses as proof that exclusion from royal inheritance structures was more deliberate and more extensive than previously imagined. For Charles, the political danger is equally severe. If he knew of additional documents and concealed them, his silence would become harder to defend. If he did not know, then the extent of what was hidden from the reigning monarch himself becomes a constitutional embarrassment of staggering proportions. That is why speculation has begun spreading far beyond Sandringham. Royal observers and historians alike are now asking a question once considered unthinkable. If one estate has been quietly protected under sealed succession instructions, how many more may be governed by similar arrangements? Balmoral, Clarence House, private trust-linked royal residences each is now being scrutinized under a new and unsettling light. The monarchy has long relied on layers of confidential estate architecture, much of it shielded from public view by private ownership structures and family trust mechanisms. What once seemed like orderly royal privacy now appears, to some, like a labyrinth of hidden provisions waiting to emerge one by one. This is what makes the Sandringham scandal feel less like a conclusion and more like the opening chapter of a deeper reckoning. Edward's inheritance confirmation may not have resolved the mystery. At all, it may simply have cracked open the first sealed door. If further hidden directives exist, then the monarchy may be standing at the edge of a far larger revelation about how Queen Elizabeth II quietly reshaped the future of the crown in her final years. And if that is true, then the real power struggle has not yet begun. The visible conflict over Sandringham may be only the surface layer of a hidden royal architecture designed to reveal itself only when challenged. For now, the papers remain unseen, their contents locked behind silence, protocol, and guarded legal discretion. But silence in royal history is rarely permanent. It is only a matter of time before sealed truths begin to press against their boundaries. And when they do, the monarchy may discover that Sandringham was never the whole story, only the first clue in a chain of hidden inheritances that could redraw the map of Windsor power itself. And if those hidden papers surface, Sandringham may prove to be only the beginning of a much larger royal upheaval. In the aftermath of Edward's legal confirmation, Queen Camilla faces more than disappointment, she faces isolation. Those once aligned with her domestic influence are now said to be retreating into silence, wary of backing a claim that has no legal footing and no royal precedent. The party, insiders whisper, may already be over. What makes Camilla's decline inside palace walls so striking is how quickly it has unfolded. Influence in the monarchy is rarely lost in one dramatic collapse. More often, it erodes through silence, through unanswered calls, delayed responses, vanished allies, and the sudden caution of those who once stood closest. That quiet erosion is now surrounding Camilla from every side. In the days following Edward's confirmed inheritance claim, the network of advisors, household allies, and administrative loyalists who once reinforced her domestic authority, has reportedly begun to thin. No public rupture has been announced, but the retreat is unmistakable. Those who once acted with confidence under her assumed future influence at Sandringham are now recalculating their loyalties with chilling speed. The reason is brutally simple. Edward's legal confirmation changed the balance of power overnight. Before the documents surfaced, Camilla's position rested on expectation, proximity, and the political assumption that her role beside the king would continue to expand her reach across royal domestic affairs. That assumption has now collapsed. Without Sandringham in her orbit, one of the strongest symbols of her anticipated long-term authority has vanished. Her faction has lost not just an estate, but a center of gravity. In royal systems built on proximity to inherited assets, that kind of loss sends a clear message. Influence without legal grounding can disappear the moment law enters the room. Inside palace administration, the shift is becoming increasingly visible. Senior staff who once treated Camilla's preferences as future-facing strategy are said to be stepping back, careful not to tie themselves to a weakened claim. Some of her strongest institutional supporters are reportedly avoiding overt alignment altogether, choosing neutrality over loyalty in a dispute where Edward's legitimacy is now beyond challenge. That distancing is politically devastating because palace administration survives on perception. The moment officials begin to believe a royal figure's authority is shrinking, their behavior changes to protect their own futures. Camilla is now confronting that cold reality in real time. Influence that depends on assumption can evaporate the moment assumption is disproven. Her authority over estate-related domestic matters has diminished with startling force. Sandringham had represented more than prestige. It was a potential anchor for shaping long-term household arrangements, staffing structures, and seasonal royal operations. With that possibility removed, Camilla's ability to project domestic influence into the monarchy's future has narrowed sharply. What was once an expanding field of quiet control is now constrained, and those constraints are being felt across internal planning circles. Even where her title remains intact, her practical reach has been reduced. That distinction may define the next phase of her royal role, visible status but diminished leverage. At the same time, public and palace perception is shifting toward Edward with growing clarity. Where Camilla now appears politically diminished, Edward is increasingly viewed as the rightful guardian of royal continuity, a figure whose quiet discipline has prevailed over assumption and ambition alike. His rise has altered the emotional temperature of the monarchy. He is no longer seen as merely dutiful or discreet. He is being recast as a stabilizing force, a royal who embodies legitimacy not through visibility, but through the unshakable authority of inherited trust. That contrast has only sharpened Camilla's isolation. The more Edward is elevated in perception, the more her own position appears weakened by comparison. And perhaps most damaging of all is what this means for the future. In upcoming royal negotiations over estates, succession influence, household power structures, Camilla enters weakened. Her political standing has been reduced at the very moment when internal alliances matter most. The monarchy remembers losses, and it rarely restores influence once it has visibly slipped away. What she has lost in this battle may not be recoverable, because the palace has already begun adjusting to a new balance of power that no longer revolves around her expectations. And in that icy silence, Edward steps into a role few expected, but perhaps one history had prepared him for all along. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.